Oliver explains that he's looking for Thea, and the gardener uh, realizes that he's looking for Mia. So again, I mean, they're kind of on the nose here. This is obviously Thea's supposed to become the Mia Dearden character from the comics. So this is another hint. So yeah, so the gardener explains that Thea's in there, and then he lets Oliver know where to find her. Oliver meets up with Thea, tries to convince Thea to return to Starling City. She doesn't want to go. Oliver decides to help Diggle find Shaw, and they find Shaw. Shaw explains that he's laying low so he can lure an Argus agent to Corto Maltese so he can steal a transcoder to decrypt computer records that has a bunch of like a list of all Argus's agents and their families and shit, where to find them. And Shaw takes out a taser and steals the transcoder that Diggle has on him. Roy tries to talk to Thea to go home, and then yet again, Thea refuses. Uh, so next, Oliver has yet another talk with Thea, and he's all like, "Well, okay, fine. I'm gonna finally reveal the truth to Thea. No more lies. Just gotta lay all the cards out on the table." So goes to Thea, says that he lied about his father Robert, and that he wasn't just a good man, he was a great man, and that he offed himself on the raft on the way to Lian the island that we saw in the flashbacks way back in season one. And that was enough for Thea to uh, reconsider and go back to Starling City with her family. And of course, the huge tease is, of course, we're thinking that Oliver is going to reveal that he's Green Arrow to Thea, and once again he pusses out because he has no balls. So, and of course, the real reason why it's not revealed is because the whole convoluted, ridiculous plot we get into later, that it wouldn't work if Thea knew that Oliver was Green Arrow at this point. So, let's see. Shaw meets with the buyer for these computer files that he decrypted. Um, he calls in a security force there. Roy, Diggle, and Oliver are there, so they get caught up in this whole thing, and the security force finds them. They use some do-it-yourself bows and arrows. They use those against the security force, which is pretty kind of ridiculous, but okay. They just kind of made some makeshift bow and arrows out of shit they found at the hotel they were staying at or some shit. And they have this big fight with the security force, and they use like guns that the security guys drop and use the guns against them. And you see Oliver just like firing guns at people and hitting people, which, didn't he make this big vow to not kill people? Well, I guess the idea is just hitting them in the arms and the legs and things. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, they Diggle confronts Shaw. He gets the files back and all that. And then Shaw explains that he was just uh, selling the files so he can get away from Argus, because he's trying to get away from Amanda Waller and Argus and all that shit. And okay, and he knocks him out and whatever. So So then Malcolm lets Thea go with Oliver. We get this cheesy scene at the airport before they go back to Starling City, where a, a dude spills a coffee on Thea, and Thea doesn't even flinch, which Oliver thinks is weird. And how convenient, right? But it's supposed to hint at to Oliver that something's up with her, and this hints at the training that Thea had with Merlin, that she has like this high pain threshold now. Uh, so yeah, that's really the main plot of the episode. Some other stuff going on in the background. Felicity, she starts working for Ray, who's like taking over Queen Consolidated, and she gets some files for him from the Applied Sciences Division of Queen Consolidated. And I'll give you a few guesses where that the term Applied Sciences came from, and why Queen Consolidated has a Applied Sciences Division. That sound familiar? Um, and there's another point in the episode. Laurel goes to the gym and sees that Wildcat guy from the first episode, and she's, I don't know, boxing or whatever, and Wildcat offers to train her. Then Laurel goes to this AA meeting she's having, and one of the women there, her boyfriend's roughing her up, so she decides to confront the boyfriend about it, and she gets her ass whipped by the boyfriend. So as a result, she decides to go back to Wildcat and take Wildcat up on his offer. Then the final scene, Deesa shows up in the Arrow Cave, which leads us to our next episode. So again, this episode gets kind of like a lot of shit for being kind of boring and like not a whole lot happening, and the villain's just kind of forgettable and stuff. But hey, after two pretty plot-heavy episodes, a lot of stuff happening in the first couple episodes. I don't see anything wrong with them having a breather. That's fine. So I mean, I don't understand like the hate for this episode. I mean, I can tolerate a slow episode here and there. So while it didn't blow me away, I again the same spiel. Forgetting what's eventually what they're gonna do with the flashbacks, forgetting what they're gonna do with Discount Iron Man, forgetting where this murder mystery's gonna go, which so far is pretty good, but inevitably it's gonna turn to shit. Completely taken out of context. This was a good episode overall, I'd say. So next up we got episode 304, The Magician. Now this episode doesn't really have a villain per se. Maybe Nisa Al Ghul would be the villain if you had to say there was a villain in this episode. And this is the episode. This is the one with the scene that forever ruins Arrow. This is the scene that it's pretty close to the end. It's not exactly the end, where Green Arrow does something so fucking stupid. It's kind of sets the tone for how they're gonna write the show going forward with this very kind of George Lucas type writing, where they just expect the audience to accept things without any real explanation or anything. They just want people to just go with it. Don't question anything. Just doesn't matter how fucking stupid it is. Just go with it. Fuck it. Right? Because you know what? There's a red guy dressed up like a complete asshole running around at Mach 1 speeds. Fuck it. Doesn't need to be logic anymore. Okay. So, yeah, that, and speaking of Star Wars, so that, if you people remember that Red Letter Media, if you're familiar with that, the Red Letter Media Star Wars Episode 1 prequel review that semi-famous review that came out 5 years ago. There's that moment in episode 1 where they talk about in the review how from here on that like that from here on out Star Wars is ruined from this moment going forward. That the lapse in logic just keep compounding on themselves and the whole film is broken. That's what this scene in this episode is. It's like from this point, the lapse in logic just keep compounding on themselves to the point where the whole show is broken and it's beyond repair. Which is too bad, because the rest of the episode up to that point is fine. I have no problem with it, and it's actually a really good episode. I'd say it's probably the best of the season up to that point. Up until that scene where it just ruins the entire show. Okay, so getting started. So episode 304, The Magician, which is named after Malcolm Merlyn. In the comics, he's known as Merlin the Magician. And in this universe, it's explained that the Magician moniker is his kind of code name or whatever. Like when you join the league, you get like a different name that's in like Arabic. So yeah, Sarah's league name was the Canary, and whatever the hell that comes out in Arabic, and then yeah, Malcolm's was the Magician. So Oliver spills the news to Nisa because Nisa is looking for Sarah, and Nisa suspects that Sarah was killed by an arrow, and yes, she was right. So, but she leaves before she can really elaborate as to why she suspects that. So Oliver has Roy tail her. See, Oliver and Thea have dinner. Nothing really important happens. I guess Oliver just tries to kind of like get Thea to talk about what the deal with the coffee thing is, but he's being really subtle about it. He doesn't just he like pussyfoots around the issue. He doesn't just fucking outright ask like what the fuck the deal with that was. Because apparently the guy again has no balls. So Nisa meets Laurel at Sarah's grave. Tells Laurel she's not worthy of wearing Sarah's black canary jacket because now Laurel's wearing it for whatever reason. And Laurel like is pissed at Nisa and blames her for Sarah's death. And Nisa explains that now she back after the Amazo sunk and all that shit that she took Sarah in, she loved her and all the stuff, took care of her and all these things and blah blah blah. So Oliver eventually finds Nisa at Sarah's safe house. So she had the safe house she was staying at in Starling City, and Nisa explains that Sarah was tracking down Malcolm Merlyn, and that she, I guess the whole thing, like they released, they let Merlyn leave the League of Assassins with the understanding, and though they don't explain why he left, but that he left the League of Assassins, or why they granted him permission to leave, because there's huge stink about not letting people be released from the League. But they let him go with the understanding that he's going to follow these strict codes and laws that they have for members of the League. And in Season 1, of course, he had that big plan to destroy the Glades with the earthquake machine and stuff. So that violated the law of the League of Assassins. So they want to track down Merlyn and kill him for this. And Sarah was there investigating. So, so there they find a clue that leads everybody to this Buddhist monk in this sanctuary.